How's it going? Welcome to the channel. Welcome to the podcast. If this is your first time as a listener, thank you for joining us. If you're a reoccurring listener, thank you for joining us once again. If the subject and the contents of coaching, leadership, and team is something that you're passionate about and resonates with you, think this channel is a great fit, think this podcast is a great fit. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. Have a great day. How's it going? This is Kearns Yamamoto with the Coaches Podcast. In here with Coach Ilaisa Tuiaki, Linebackers Coach for University of Northern Colorado. Coach, thanks for jumping on. Please tell us about your family, journey, background, all that good stuff.
Appreciate you having me. Yeah, were we going back to the beginning?
Back to the beginning, baby.
Back to the beginning. Yeah, so I played college football at the JUCO level. Then I got done playing at Southern Utah is where I played, and I immediately got into coaching. I was teaching high school sophomore English and coaching football at the same time. Did that for a couple of years. Got an opportunity to go up to the University of Utah as a graduate assistant. The head coach that I played for at Southern Utah was at Utah as the defensive coordinator. So I jumped on as a grad assistant there, and just right place, right time. You know, it was the 2008 year where Utah went to the Sugar Bowl and played Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. And so I was a GA there and just kind of rode coattails of people that were successful. You know what I mean? Just right place, right time, knowing the right people. So the D coordinator, the guy that I played for at Southern Utah, Gary Anderson, he took a job at Utah State right after the Sugar Bowl. And that was my first official full-time job as a college coach. I followed him to Utah State. I was the coach on the offensive side. I coached running backs for 3 years, was special teams coordinator. As well as just, back then you didn't have big staffs. It was just one GA on offensive defense, and your staff pretty much took up the academic liaison. You had recruiting coordinators. So I had just, the luxury really of being a GA for a guy and knowing how he wanted it. And so he dumped a lot of stuff on me. And so my plate was always full with just a lot of different stuff: academic liaison, in-state recruit, mission liaison, recruiting coordinator, that kind of stuff. And so it was hard early, but it was good. It was really good for my career. So I spent 3 years there at Utah State. Had a chance to, at that point, Utah had moved from the Mountain West to the Pac-12. And so I had a chance to go and coach at the University of Utah after that. And that first year I went in and I was coaching tight ends. I was still on the offensive side of the ball. And after a year, Gary Anderson got a job to go to Wisconsin. And so he left Utah State and he took Chad Kahaha. Do you know Chad at all? Yeah.
I know the name and I know everyone that's, that knows him, but I've never met him.
Maui guy. So Chad was coaching the D-line at Utah. He went to Wisconsin with Gary Anderson. We had been together at Utah State, coaching together there. And so Matt Wells got the job at Utah State. Matt Wells actually reached out to me and offered me the job to come in as the offensive coordinator. And I was going to work with him. He was going to call the offense and I was going to learn under him. And at the University of Utah, Kalani Sitake, as the D coordinator, asked me to flip over on the other side of the ball and coach D-line for him because Chad just left. And so, it was a tough decision. It was really a win-win situation to either go back to Utah State as the OC under Matt Wells or just stay. But, my wife and I, we put it all on paper. We talked about it, and we actually made the decision to leave to go to Utah State. We knelt down to pray about it, as we do about all big decisions. And in our prayer, it was really one of the first times, and I prayed a lot in my life, but it was one of the first times where I felt like I got an answer, like a distinct answer, and the answer was to stay. And so at that time at the University of Utah, we had just gone 5-7. And so, the seat was getting hot for Kyle Whittingham. And really, it was probably a better move on paper to leave, which we saw, but felt like the Lord wanted us to stay. And so regardless of what was going to happen to us, whether we stayed and ended up getting fired at Utah, it was a decision that we made was just, we're going to stay and just play this thing out because that's where we need to be. And so stayed at Utah and flipped over from the offensive side to the defensive side, started coaching D-line. At that point, was getting a lot of good mentoring from a lot of different coaches and was fortunate enough to really connect and do some professional development with a guy named Pete Jenkins, who is I mean, in the South, it's a really big name. It's a guy that really, Nick Saban and all those guys just in the South, they all go through Pete Jenkins. Pete Jenkins is kind of like the guru of D-line play. He coached for a long time in the NFL as well as in college, but I just happened to do development with Gary Anderson at Wisconsin. Dave Aranda was the D coordinator, and Dave Aranda happened to be a Pete Jenkins guy. And so he brought in Pete Jenkins to do development with Chad Kaha'a, and myself and Frank Miley. Frank was still at Utah State at that time, and we're close. Frank and I, our grandmas are sisters, and so we're really close. He called me up and said, going down to work with Pete Jenkins. So I went down and did some development, and that's really philosophically where a lot of things, development comes from when it comes to D-line play. So coached the D-line at Utah for 2 years. Gary Anderson left Wisconsin, and he went to Oregon State 2015. And we had a good team coming back at the University of Utah, but Gary Anderson to me was almost like my football dad. I played for him at Southern Utah. He brought me on as a GA. He took me to Utah State. And so when he left Wisconsin and went to Oregon State, he asked me to come with him. And it's like it didn't really matter whether it was a good decision or not. It was like your football dad's asking you to come help. You go help, And so I went with him that year, 2015, and it was a tough year. It was a rough year. 2015. That was Mike Riley left in Nebraska, and we came in, and the first year we went 2-10 at Oregon State. But my family life was awesome. Like when I was with him at Oregon State, football sucked. And you because you're in Corvallis, the country club membership's a good bonus to have especially when you're a golfer. And so everything about my life was awesome. I mean, my family loved it. It was nice for us to just get out of the state of Utah. But anyways, after that year, I was planning to stay again, and Kalani Sitake got the head job at BYU. And so Kalani asked me to come with him. And I actually made the decision to stay at Oregon State because my family loved it. We didn't want to go back to the state of Utah. And, Gary Anderson gave me a piece of advice there when I was talking to him about whether or not I would stay or leave. He said, hey, Kalani's going as a first-time head coach, and he's going to be sitting at a table with hopefully familiar faces, but he's got to have somebody that he trusts, somebody that is his guy. And, it'd be difficult if he's like, I'd love to keep you, but I think you need to consider that, like, you're his guy, And so anyways, after I got that piece of advice, I was like, okay, I'm good. I'm going. And at that time, Kalani was trying to get me a coordinator spot. The AD, he and the AD was kind of going back and forth. AD didn't want it to happen, didn't feel like I was qualified. And so anyways, I was going to stay. But then when Gary Anderson told me that, I decided I was going to go no matter what. And so I called up Kalani. I was like, okay, I'm in. I'm coming with you. And he says, I'm still working on some stuff. I was like, I don't really care what the position is. I'm in. Like, I'm coming with you. Whatever, position coach, special teams, offense, defense, doesn't really matter. And he worked it. He kept working it and was able to bring me in as the D coordinator, which I was really grateful for because I wasn't expecting it. And I knew that he'd be fighting with administration just about certain hires that he was making and asking to do. So went to BYU, spent 7 years there as the defensive coordinator. Some good years, a couple of rough years, but overall, it was a good experience. The BYU, the fans, they love their football. And so the year there was 1 year 2, where we went 4-8, 4-8 or 4-9. It was 4-8. That last home game, I mean, there were still like 50, 60,000 people in the stands. That just kind of tells the type of program that is. They're going to get support no matter what. But with that kind of fandom comes the high expectation. It's just pressure's up there. It's there's a lot of expectation. They keep bringing up the 1984 national championship. Like, all right, well, we're independent. I don't know if it's going to happen, but the expectations were always high. And that was the thing about being there was after 7 years, it started to take its toll. You know what I mean? It's just the things that your family goes through. And not a lot of people talk about just all that stuff, but just the things that my kids are going through at school. You want to be a church member before you're a football coach. And a lot of times it's just people kind of mix that up, and it's just felt like we weren't in a good place, my family. And so, I had to get fired on paper so that I can keep my contract. But Kalani and I basically just kind of made the decision like, hey, he was getting a lot of He was getting a lot of pressure from the outside. We were getting to the point where it just wasn't fun anymore. And so I helped him by stepping out, and he helped me by taking care of my contract. And so things worked out. I took the year 2023 off and then jumped back in 2024, 2025 at Oregon State, where I met you. And that was good. But after we got fired up there at Oregon State just this past year, Ed Lamb, that's here now at UNC, he's been here going on year 4. I mean, he and I were together at BYU for 7 years, and I learned so much football from him. He was a super, super sound ball coach, and just, was excited to kind of get back around just people that I know. I think that's a big thing in coaching. It's, when I came out there at Oregon State 2024, I didn't know anybody. I knew JR. JR and I grew up together, but outside of that, in recruiting, didn't really know anybody, and obviously left after 2 years with good relationships and just new friends. But it's tough, you move into a new spot, and I think it's always like that initially. You walk into a spot and everybody's got their guards up, and it takes time to break down these walls so that there's trust and all that stuff. And sometimes the wall never comes down with certain people, and sometimes the wall does. But anyways, after that, just here, but super excited about just being with guys that I've worked with before, and camaraderie, trust, all that stuff. It's just, we hit the ground running because of that.
That's an awesome path. That's an awesome journey. And there's a lot I'm going to want to dissect. But before we get into that, you missed a big part of your life that, for my 3 listeners that I got, my 3 consistent listeners, you forgot to talk about your freaking MMA career and how you meshed your MMA career with your football career and still being a dad on top of that. Tell us a little about the Ogre 6.
The MMA career. Yeah, when I got done playing at Southern Utah, I came back and I was already coaching football. When I got back, my brother was already doing boxing, and he was like, "Hey, there's this gym I go to. There's this young Tongan boxer named Shona Bo'uha. He was like 16 at the time. He's like, I'll bet you he can beat you up." And I was like, "There's no 16-year-old in the world that can beat me up, And so he's like, "Just come to the gym and check it out." And so I went to the gym, and I was watching him move around, and I was like, "Dude, I think this 16-year-old can beat me." He was super scary. So I jumped in and started training with them. And I was kind of doing that on the side, as well as coaching ball, wrestling coach. I took on an assistant wrestling coach just to get a little bit of stipend, but I was always just kind of doing boxing on the side. And in the boxing gym, they had jiu-jitsu classes every day after. And so I found out that a lot of these people were doing jiu-jitsu and boxing and all that stuff, just really mixed martial arts, right? So that they can fight. And at that time, in the early 2000s, the UFC was already going, but everything else was really just underground. There weren't a lot of big venues outside of that. And so I jumped in and decided I was going to go try it out. They called it the UCE, Ultimate Combat Experience is what it was. And they would fight at local bars, just a bunch of different places. Sometimes it was a ring, sometimes it was a cage, but it was like the contracts were $50 to fight. And then if you win, you get $50. Right? So
for the love of the game right there.
Yeah, after every single win, your bonus goes up $50. And so fight number 2, 50 to fight and $100 to win. And so, and I went, first five fights I was winning. So I got to the point where I was headliner in just the Utah Borders one, Utah versus Idaho. Fought a dude from Boise, but really just kind of did that for fun, just thought that it was going to be fun while I was still coaching football and rugby and doing all that stuff and working at Delta in the evenings, just throwing bags, as a part-time worker, just trying to make it as a dad, making as much money as I could.
So this was pre-GA at Utah, or?
This was pre-GA at Utah when I was still coaching at Kearns High School. I was coaching Kearns High School, fighting on the side, throwing bags on the ramp,
That's awesome. That's freaking awesome.
I
mean, you were around a great staff at Utah, and just pretty much everywhere you went, you'd run with great staff. Give me your best GA story of where you kind of dropped the ball a little bit and you got MF'd.
Yeah. So there was the recruiting rules, they all change. You know what I mean? And when you first get into the game, right, like learning all these rules, when you can contact the junior, how many phone calls you got back then, you know what I mean? Like stuff like that. And so there was a highly recruited kid that we were recruiting, and I was supposed to just reach out to the high school coach and get a number or something like that. Got the number, and I called the number. The mom picked up, right? And so when they pick up, technically it triggers basically that's your one phone call for the spring, right? For this one recruit. And all I did was just talk to the mom for like 10 seconds. And after I got off, they were like, Gary Anderson's like, did you just talk to somebody? I was like, and I was excited, like, oh yeah, I talked to the mom, and he's like, dude, that's the one phone call that we get for this whole spring. Like we can't talk to him anymore. And yeah, he gave it to me after that. But I was like, dude, I felt so dumb. Like, dang it. These stupid rules, man.
That's funny. That's funny. You mentioned that you and your wife, sit down and pray over any sort of big time decision. When you guys are going through that process of choosing between one job and the other job, can you kind of lay down just kind of what you guys are listing out between the pros and cons and your criteria?
I think first of all, I think it's important to when you're just this is my belief, right? Religiously, is that a lot of people pray to be guided. I believe that you need to study it out in your mind. You need to study it out in your mind. You need to study it out in your heart. And when you make a decision, and you take that decision to the Lord, and I believe that the answer will come back either nothing really happening after you pray, and so it's kind of like carry on, business as usual. You've made the decision, just keep going, or a burning sensation in your heart, just something that feels like, okay, this is it, or what we call stupor of thought, which is you all of a sudden kind of forget what it is that you're asking about, and that is a hard no, right? And so in the process, though, it's like, okay, the amount of money that you're making, right? Like, and for us, for what we were basically making at that time, it was going to end up being sixes, but which side of the ball you want to be on, who do you want to be around? Where do you want to live? We loved Logan, like Logan, Utah, very comparable to Corvallis. It's a great spot. Like out of all the places that I've lived and coached, I would say Corvallis is my favorite, and Logan, Utah is my second. And so that came into it as well. Just kind of my kids. When we spent 3 years there, they had friends already, and it was going to be, that was going to the money, the title, coaching with Matt Wells again. And he and I worked together for 3 years or 2 years before that. And so there's a lot of familiarity. I was going to train under him, which was going to be a good thing because we had worked together, but I was gonna be able to learn how to call a game on the way that he does. And there's a lot of positive that way. And flipping over to the other side was going to be a long road, right? Like having to learn D-line play. And so then it was just kind of charting those things out, like just basically putting Utah State on this side, Utah on this side, and just putting out all the pros and cons and looking at it and making a decision off of that, kind of ranking what's the most important thing, what's super important to us. And after we studied it out in our mind and had made the decision and brought it to the Lord, that's where we felt like we got a hard no. That's pretty much is what we decided.
Yeah. No, I like that, coach. Digging a little deeper here, what is the why behind coaching?
You know, yeah. I've always loved the game of football. When we moved here from the islands, big fan of Barry Sanders. That was when he got drafted to the NFL, and just the way he was moving, playing Tecmo Bowl every day. It was like, just that was really my introduction to football. Was just video games and being around my friends that loved it and everything. But then I just got addicted to the game. Like I love the game of football. Always wanted to be a part of it. Always wanted to play in the NFL. But then when I got into, so I always wanted to be involved with the game of football. But eventually, when I did, step into coaching, which was always the dream after playing in the NFL, the dream was to coach. I feel like I kind of dummied into just what coaching was and the purpose of it. Before it was just like just want to stay in the game, but then you fall in love with just player development, meeting new people, seeing them go through changes, right? And I think that part of coaching to me is the part that's the most rewarding, the most addicting, is that you're building people, right? Like some people build bridges, some people build, paintings, drawings. I think as a coach, you build people, and it takes you see it, go from one person, a 18-year-old boy that comes into your program, all the way to when he's leaving, anywhere between 20 to 23, 24, and completely different person, the day in, day out, the time that you spend with the heartaches that they go through, the advice that you're able to give them. I think that part of the coaching has been addicting to me, is just the development of people,
That's a great answer right there. Looking back throughout your career, was there ever like an aha moment, that helped to, shape your philosophy or shape your outlook?
felt like I had it figured out when I was younger, but the older I get and the more time that I spend in it, the more I learn and the more that I just realize that they're just aha moments over and over and over. You know what I mean? And so you kind of learn a little bit more about yourself as you're going through this thing. But it's and that's the cool thing I think about coaching is the players change, the times change, right? But the principles that you live by, they don't change. Like principles are going to be the same from the beginning of time to the end of time as far as the principles of charity, hard work, dedication, those kinds of things. And it's super cool to just see that principles as you see them throughout changing times and changing people and changing everything, they're still the foundation of just basically building. You know what I mean?
Yeah. One of the things when, when you first got over to Oregon State and, I got to work with you probably directly, maybe for, I don't know, a week or something like that. I can't remember what it was before I moved over to teams. But anyways, two things really stood out, just from standing back and observing. One is, here's this ex-coordinator coming in from BYU. He's a freaking meticulous note taker. Like in any defensive staff meeting that I sat on, like you were very meticulous about the notes that you took. And two was this is the first time, I've been around it, I guess at a Division III level and a Division I level, close to 10 plus years. But this was the first time that I seen an actual coach hop in on the workout with the players and not only do the lift, but do the run. So what is it about, those two habits? Like when did you pick those up? Why do you do them?
It's I actually picked it up from Ed Lamb when we were at BYU. It was you need to get a workout anyways, right? Like you need to get a workout, but he was a big proponent of working out with his players when he was the head coach at Southern Utah. And they changed the program there. That's my alma mater. But when he came to BYU, I mean that was kind of his thing, and I was like, all right, yeah, let's jump in and work out. And I really enjoyed being pushed, physically. But then the thing that I just didn't necessarily plan on, but happened was how close I got with the players. You know what I mean? Like being right next to them during their failures, during their successes, but also just them kind of patting you on the butt and cheering you on. When because I mean I'm 270, right? And so I'm out there trying to run with all the guys. It's like I'm always last, like in all the drills. But I think that there's an appreciation from the player's point of view of just this guy knows what we're going through, and uh, and I always appreciate it because I also it's like I always hated when there was like a fat, just out of shape coach yelling at a super fit player. It was like it just didn't sit right with me, and I enjoyed and I enjoy or I like the idea that just the players know that I know it's hard, and I'm not going to sit there and yell and degrade and all that, but I'm going to have an appreciation, and I'm going to, and I think that it puts you in a relationship where you can pull more out of them by just saying fewer words of encouragement instead of degrading. And I just seen so many coaches that do that degrade a player to try to get more out of them, and that's just was never my style. But I love that part about working out with the players.
What would you say if I ask you your coaching philosophy? What is important to Coach Tuiaki?
I've in prepping for trying to get ready for all these head coach interviews and all that stuff, and some jobs that I've kind of gone for. What I felt about it is that I've got to be true to myself. You know what I mean? I feel like several times in the past I've kind of just had a philosophy where I'm trying to steal somebody else's, and hey, this sounds good and this all this, but um my philosophy is I mean it's got to be me deep to my core, which is everything is based off of religion. Like I am my religion before I am a ball coach. You know what I mean? I'm a child of God before I'm anything else. And so to me, the principles of charity is what you build people off of, is what you build a program off of. And it's something that comes natural to me. I don't have to fake it. I don't have to remember, or I don't have to, it's not lines that I'm remembering and trying to put up on walls, but it's just like I'm a disciple of Christ, and everything that I do is based off of that. And I would say in all these times that I've kind of been prepping, that is my coaching philosophy, is that we're builders of men, and you've got to do it off of principles of charity.
Yeah, I like that, Coach. If there was advice that you would go back and, give your younger self, or if there was advice that you would give to young aspiring coaches, Because you've been through it all in your career. Adversity on the football side, adversity on the personal side. What would that advice be?
That advice would be, don't be so hard on yourself, and pick yourself up and just keep moving. Keep moving forward. I think that's a vice of the devil, to try to discourage you, to try to make you feel like you're not good enough, to try to make you feel like everybody makes mistakes, you know what I mean? But things aren't as big of a deal as you think in the moment, and to just brush it off and just keep moving forward. Have a good attitude, forgive yourself, and just keep moving forward. I don't think that there's enough of that. I think there's a lot of, especially in this field where everything's super competitive, you know what I mean? And everyone's kind of standing around waiting to just to rip into the guy that makes a mistake. You know what I mean? I feel like you can build men, but you can also build a stronger unit, build a better team by having some of that compassion that it takes in order to just continue to just build, because we're all sinners. We are all in need of grace. You know what I mean? And so I would tell my younger self, like, brush it off and just keep moving forward. Keep moving forward with faith, keep moving forward with hope in the future, and just have a good attitude, and don't let none of that stuff knock you down.
That's good stuff, Coach. Greatest challenge in coaching.
Say that again.
So what do you think is the greatest challenge in coaching?
That's a tough one. I think as you're learning in coaching, I think the biggest challenge is being true to yourself, because you have this image in your mind of what a coach is, and I think that you could easily lose yourself by trying to be what you think a coach is. But we're all trying to figure it out. You know what I mean? I think it's about being true to yourself, and to continue trying, because you see it so many times, right? Like Nick Saban is ripping a dude. And so all of a sudden, every single little league coach is out there ripping their players. You know what I mean? It's like everyone has this idea of what a good coach is. And I think there's so many different, they're good coaches from so many different facets of life. You know what I mean? And I think a good coach is somebody who's true to himself and is building people. I think that's what a good coach. And then obviously, if you're doing that and you're winning, then it's like, okay, that's a good ball coach, right? But I think winning will always come down to just principles that are never changing. Principles like hard work and dedication, and mention the principles of charity. But I think it's hard in coaching to be true to yourself, because you can lose yourself fast trying to pretend like you're a coach. Like, you're a coach, dude, because you coach ball. Just be yourself.
That's a great answer. That's a really good answer. And that's why I like doing the podcast, because I get to learn and pull from different coaches, and coaches who might be a little bit more old school, or coaches who might have more of an approach that you take, and that's a really powerful answer. Thinking back, we went and grabbed some breakfast at Sharon's when you were still living in Corvallis, and then we were just chopping it up, and we were talking about just calling plays, and I can't remember exactly what you said verbatim, but can you kind of talk about when you were at DC, kind of what your goals and objectives were when you're starting off the drive?
Yeah.
You kind of know where I'm going with the line of question, and you talked about you at least had one of the first two plays needed to be a stuff, and then you kept on. It was awesome. So if you could touch on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. When we were talking about really just calling plays, right? And I can't remember where we started in the conversation, or how far back we went. I mean, we can go a little bit farther back when we're talking about the reasoning, but first, second, third down, right? Really. Okay, let me go back to this. What we talked about was the purpose of defense in winning a game, right? Like, the purpose of defense in winning a game. Playing defense is not a winning strategy in any game, right? Playing soccer, if you're just going to play defense and give the possession back to the offense, doesn't matter how good you are, eventually you're going to give up a goal, right? The same thing in really boxing and MMA. If all you're doing is guarding the whole time, but there's no offensive, part of your game and fighting, you're going to lose. You're going to lose by points, even if you're defending well. And so playing defense is not a winning strategy. So what is the purpose of defense? And the purpose of defense is to keep points off the board, number one, but then also get possession of the ball back. That's it. Right? Like, if I can do both at the same time, like, if the best thing that I can do as a defense is on the very first play of the game, a pick six or a scoop and score fumble recovery, right? Like that is literally the best thing that can happen for us. Outside of that, the next best thing is just to get an interception or a fumble and give the ball back to the offense. And so even if you're the best scoring defense, I'm talking about pick sixes and all that stuff in college football, you're really probably only scoring like 6 or 7 touchdowns a game. Not a game, a season. 6 or 7 touchdowns a season. That's really good, right? That's like the best defense. That's the best scoring defenses. And even that, right? Like if your offense didn't score any, you're looking at 3 points a game is what the defense is doing. And so it's just, going back to it, playing defense is not a winning strategy. And so when you look at that, you think, okay, how can I keep points off the board and how can I get the ball back, right? In the 3 things that are super important to me when you're talking about just that strategy, keeping points off the board and getting the ball back. Big plays, right? Big plays is a big thing. Takeaways is another thing. And then just points. That's really everything that you base your goals off of. And so going back to your question about calling a game on first and second and third down, if you can face a third down for every first down that you face, all you need is 1 stop and you're eventually going to get the offense to punt the ball back to you. Does that make sense? Okay, building back from third down, I'm a little muttering as I'm kind of thinking about this all in my mind. But if you're building everything off of 3rd and 7 plus, right? Because 3rd and 7 plus in studies, they basically show that that's where offenses mostly get into drop back passes. And that's where 75% of takeaways happen is interceptions, sack, strip, fumbles is 3rd and 7 plus. And so if you want to get to 3rd and 7 plus every single time, you've got to build your first and second down calls off of it, right? And so to me, we're trying to keep them to fewer than 4 yards the whole time. So on first down, I'm always looking for a stuff. And so the call and the way the players play need to be according to trying to get a stuff, right? I've seen, I've studied, and I kind of look at just how defensive coordinators call it. If you have a big menu and everything gets called to everything, sometimes you kind of, that idea of trying to get a stuff on first down is a little drowned out, like because the players just have so much to worry about. But if you're calling it and you have specific calls, it's like, okay, even if I call quarters, right? Like for us, we called Sally back at Oregon State. If I'm calling Sally on first down, my players know that we're looking for a stuff, then my backers are a little bit faster to trigger downhill, if they see run and everyone's playing a little bit faster as far as just we're looking for a stuff, right? Or my pressures are according to that. I'm basically calling my pressures to get the stuff on first down. So when it comes to second down, if it's second and long, now I'm thinking, okay, if I can get a beat on the offensive coordinator where if he gets stuff on first down and second down, he normally passes it, I'm looking to turn up the dial on the aggression so I can try to get a takeaway or a sack, strip, fumble, right? Because if offenses are doing that, then I'm basically trying to take the ball away. Second and medium means I didn't get a stuff on first down. I absolutely need a stuff on second down. And so I've got to call that accordingly, right? I missed my stuff on first down. I need a stuff on second down. My play call needs to be according to what I'm trying to do. I'm not just throwing darts and just kind of randomly calling things and hoping the players do it. It's got to be according to what I'm looking for, right? And then obviously on third down, third and long, I'm looking for a takeaway. Third and medium, I'm just looking to get off the field, right? And then third and short, obviously I'm looking to get off the field too. If I can get them to punt or I can take the ball away, my calls, my menu should be tools in my belt that I'm basically pulling out. I'm not, that's one thing that I've just kind of seen is coordinators will have their list and their list is just kind of, I'm going to sprinkle this in. I'm thinking this, I'm sprinkling it's I feel like there needs to be a little bit more purpose as far as just, I'm not going to call this call just because it's on my normal down distance call, because it's not aggressive enough when I need aggression, if that makes sense. I don't know if that answers your question.
That did. No, that's good. That's good stuff right there. When you're studying an opposing offense, how do you go about, what's your process look like when you're calling it? What's your process look like to get a beat on that offensive coordinator, to figure out, who he is, what his mentality is, what his philosophy is as a play caller?
During the week when you're kind of looking at it, to me, I go back and I look at big plays. Like to me, that's the most important thing, right? A lot of people just put it by watching it by first downs, right? Normal down distance first downs. Then they watch it by second and longs and second mean. Really, they watch all normal down distance together. That's what most people do, is they watch first and second down together. But to me, it's a little bit different, where the offense is doing the same thing, where it's just like, what type of offense are you facing, right? Like, what does the coordinator like to do on the first downs, as far as just run pass? Are they pretty even? And then what does it look like after a stuff on first down? So if it's a run stuff on first down, what do you normally get on second down, right? If it's a pass, unsuccessful pass on first down, what do you normally get on second long? Just that kind of stuff. And I know a lot of people do that. Look at the game that way, and you're really just trying to get a beat on it. But now you're trying to use the correct tool for the correct time, if that makes sense. And I think the more tools you have, the harder it is for the players. And so I'm not a real. I'm a guy that is. I believe in a sufficient menu, but I believe that your menu could be too big. You know what I mean? Where it's kind of watered down for the players, and now they're playing more trying to be correct than they are trying to play the tactical game. I think it's super important to be simple enough where the players are playing tactical football. You know what I mean? Like, they understand what's going on as far as the down and distance. They understand and expect, playing with a little anticipation as far as what they're expecting, tied into a little bit more of what the coordinator's thinking, and you know, kind of calling it like that.
When you're building out your call sheet during the week or in the beginning of the week, I guess, what's that trigger point where you're like, okay, this is it. This is what I'm going in with. I'm not doing any more. To get that Tuesday practice underneath your belt to see what the guys can
Yeah,
process
you
before you
think
make a decision.
that, but it's also just kind of feeling like you have you have enough tools in the situations where you want to increase aggression or play increased coverage aggression. You know what I mean? Like, play good coverage or play super aggressive. I think once you kind of find the place there where you feel pretty good about, okay, if I need to dial it up, and I feel good about not being stuck in just one look the whole time. This complements this complements this. Okay, I feel pretty solid about it. And all of that, to me, needs to be built around stopping big plays, right? Like, I'm trying to think of just the big plays happen when big plays happen when you're playing man coverage pressures, and something bursts, like, just goes through. You know what I mean? Like, cover zero pressures. And so I think that it's important to have cover zero pressures, but to be that super aggressive in the middle of the field, when you can maybe do zone pressures or something that's a little bit safer, that's something to consider. You know what I mean? Tight formations versus man coverage. If you're always playing tight formations and they're just always formationing you when you're playing man coverage, I think that's another thing that can kind of screw you up, because people running naked, or just you having the wrong leverage playing man-to-man coverage. And those normally happen in third mediums, especially, you know what I mean? Where people are trying to formation and motion you, kind of getting caught in man coverage that way. Then I think zone pressures against spread formations are super hard. Max pro formations against man coverage or quarters. I think that's super hard. And so you're a football guy. And so if you knew that a team was going to go max pro 3-man route and take a shot, what defense would you want to be in? You know that the offense is going to go max pro and take a shot, right?
Yeah.
7-man protection, 3-man route,
Drop
take
eight.
a
I'll
shot.
go drop eight.
You go drop 8?
I'd probably go drop eight. Well, what are you doing?
There's only 3 vertical threats. So to me, you pressure. But I don't want to be in a man pressure, because I don't
That's why I
want
don't.
anybody
That's
on an
why I don't
island.
call it. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
That's why I don't call it.
you know what I mean? And so I think there's a time for man pressures, then there's a time for zone pressures. If you're going to go 3 under 3 deep, I like bailing corners, and 3 underneath guys if I'm going to get 3-man routes, because I've only got three vertical threats, if that makes sense, with a little bit sped up pressure, because you got a 5-man pressure, and hopefully 5-man, looping and all that stuff end up getting to the quarterback. But that's just like stuff like that. So if I'm a man team and that's my baby, and I get stuck in max pro shots a lot, I think that's the coordinator's fault, because eventually they're gonna find somebody if you're playing man coverage, because the one guy in the post, you're gonna run something that just you're gonna give up leverage. It's the same thing in quarters. If you're playing quarters and you have a 4-man rush with 5-man pressure, a 4-man rush with a 7-man pro, 3-man route, I just feel like eventually they're going to find something. And so to me, the happy medium is, send 5 and play different coverages, so that you're not always just sitting there in a 4-man rush versus 7-man pro.
I like it. How much How much two trap did you run when you were at BYU, or did you guys
So
run any two
so
fire, or is more so 3 fire stuff?
uh, so I'm learning that just means something different. What's two trap?
Just five man pressure,
Five
two
man
trap behind it.
pressure,
Yeah.
5-man pressure with a hard corner.
Yes.
Is that the same with? Yeah, yeah, yeah. We called that. Yeah, we did. Yeah, ran that. So 400 two deeps, 400 two deeps. We ran with a 5-man pressure, but also that trap 400 two deep with a trap corner was another way that we'd run it, and then 300 three deep. But then also just the blitz 5, man 5 with one in the post, right?
Yeah.
Or blitz 6 with one in the post and peel one, or blitz 7 with none in the post and peel one, like just all the different kinds. And that's a big Utah thing. Kyle Whittingham's defense, Morgan Scalley's kind of running it now. Not kind of. Morgan Scalley's run it and has just run it successfully. Since then, it's just there's so many different types of pressures and coverages. What is a 302 deep, like that
Yeah.
kind of stuff? 203 deep. What do we call those?
The hot pressures.
Hots. Yeah.
Yeah.
203 deep hots. I'm seeing 302 deep now, which
I haven't
are
seen. I haven't. I've been out for. I don't even know. When was it? One season. One season. I haven't
you've
seen
been
too
out one
much.
season. Do you act like you've been out for 20 years?
It feels long, man. You had a year off. It feels like a long time. If you're not involved in it though, like it's crazy how much. I feel
Yeah.
like it's just like muscle atrophy. If you don't use it, you lose it type thing.
Every skill's a perishable skill. Yep, for sure.
No, that's a good one right there. What do you think is an overlooked situation in football?
Overlooked situation. I don't know if I'm I don't know if I'm good to answer that. I don't know if I pay attention to just football in general. Are you talking about like just kind of the landscape of college?
No, I more so on the field during the game. Maybe something that doesn't get enough attention, or
I
something that
think I think
maybe throughout the week you guys aren't practicing or harping on enough.
yeah, no, that's an interesting question. Yeah, the initial thing that came to my mind as you were talking was a little bit more about college football, which I don't pay as much attention as I should. But the second thing that came to my mind was really just the football zones. I don't think a lot of people pay attention to football zones. You know what I mean? Like the backed up, the coming out, the alumni zones, and we saw a big swing of that when you were still with us, Coach. I mean, during that time, it's like the year before that, even you saw so many people going for it on fourth down, in the minus 40, and it felt like there weren't enough people paying attention to those types of zones, because I think that needs to be incorporated in your practice as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
One of the big things, you were involved with special teams, and you knew, but even before that, when you're coaching on defense, man, the offenses normally have that magic number, right? When you're talking about sequencing downs, and that magic number changes depending on where you're at on the field. And I think that's one thing that some teams you can tell are good at sequencing, and some teams aren't. Some teams will tell pretty quickly, at least from the offensive side. When you're watching an offense, you can tell if they're a team that is cognizant of what zones, cognizant of just playing complementary football, aggression at certain times versus just conservative at certain times. Some teams are out there just slinging it. Minus 10, third and 17, 5-step drop back pass. Like, dude, that's you know what I mean? The percentages are so low, and the risk for you to just screw up the game. There's so many people out there that are doing it, but there's just those are offensive coaches. Those are people that are just there's there's never say quit, never say die. But to me, I think that when you're playing, complementary football, there's got to be some kind of give and take
Yeah.
when you're playing good defense, and all of a sudden you're out there as an offense, and all you do is trick it off. All you're doing is giving us bad field position, and throwing picks, and giving the ball up. It's just like that's the kind of stuff to me that I think there's a lot of some teams are good at and some teams aren't.
I'd give you a heads up beforehand, so my daughter Anela gets to ask a question for the guest, and her question was, "What's your favorite food?" Don't say horse. Don't say horse for the podcast. Hold on. Good thing your mic got muffled right there. What'd you say? Say it again.
I love Tongan food, and horse is a delicacy in Tonga. You know what I mean? Horse is a delicacy, and so love horse with all the different roots. The yams and the yucca and all that stuff. Just all the things that grow in the islands. But I love that. I love fish. Love anything that really my wife makes that's Tongan.
Yeah, I like that. It's a good answer.
You've had horse. Don't lie.
Yeah, one time. it was actually at a church event. And I didn't know it was horse. It was just in the tin foil. I thought it was Lao Lao for a second. It wasn't Lao Lao.
And you loved it.
No, I did not. It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. Once I found out though, once I found out, that's when I was like, oh shoot, can't do that. Can't do that. Kind of just talking about, college football specific. And I know you ran into it at Oregon State and a little bit at Northern Colorado, but how has retention been really affected by NIL?
I think there's an obvious pecking order, and I think that that's something that everybody just got to be wise to. Like it's going to happen.
What do you mean pecking order? There's just different
It's
tiers,
yeah. I
and
mean, if you're in
kids are going to get pulled up.
kids are going to get pulled up, right? It's like P4 is the new NFL. Like back then when I was playing, when we were playing, you're not that much younger than me. We're about the same age when we were playing.
What? How old are you? I'm 30. I'm 32. You got to be at least 46, 47, 45. Yeah,
47. Yeah, when we were playing, when I was coming up, it was NFL or bust, right? And there's a little bit, I think there's a little bit more loyalty to just kind of like the team that way. Now, the P4 is the new NFL. All right. When you're just talking about just making money and even life-changing money, being able to take care of, finances, take care of your family, stuff like that. Like that's the new NFL. And so kids are going to try to move up any way that they can. And it's just what it is. And so you're in a pecking order, right? It goes from P4s, even in the P4s, they have a pecking order, right? Like you're at Alabama versus Wake Forest. There's a pecking order there, but like from P4s to G5s, G6 down to FCS, there's an obvious pecking order. And when a player is proven, I'm a big fan of kids moving up. Like if that's your dream and you think you're ready. Now I think that does need to be a discussion. Some kids are just basically just trying to get anything, right? Like they're trying to move anything. But I think that there are some people that just need to have a discussion about, okay, going to learn like one of the kids that was at Oregon State for us that left right before that 2024 year. I mean, he went to Florida State, didn't play much, had to learn a new system. They convinced him that, oh, you're going to play in the NFL, you have to learn multiple systems. But he was a hard learner, right? English was a second language. I think for a guy like that, you're going to leave to Florida State for, I don't know what he left for, 350 versus staying put and being basically the face of the defense at 200. You know what I mean? I think they were still paying him decently. I think sometimes those kids end up just making bad decisions for themselves because I don't even know. I don't think he made it anywhere after that.
No, not after that. Not after that.
Yeah,
He's doing well now though. From what Lang said, he's married and he's happy and he's working now.
Yeah,
But who would have known, like you said, like if he stuck around and he was getting
stuck around, you're
compensated
playing
well,
in a
yeah.
system that you're good at, you're playing in a system that you understand, but it's taking you time to learn. And then just, maybe you get a shot after that, but you're still making a little bit of money. I think in hindsight, some of those kids, they take the money early, but they give up so much more in the future. And I think there is kind of that. But I mean, I'm kind of going around your question there, but I think that retention for us here has been good. I think retention in general is it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like you've got to expect that some of the better players are going to leave, and kids are going to do what's best for themselves. You know what I mean? And so if you haven't built a program where they feel comfortable and they feel like we're moving places, then you're probably going to lose a lot. But I think if you built a program where kids feel like you're going places, you're taking care of them enough, there's transparency. That's a big thing. I think if there's no transparency, you're going to lose a lot of kids. But I think it's just where we are now. It's the reality.
I think especially at the FCS level, I'd be curious to like how many guys that are hopping in the portal from the Division II, Division III schools are getting that type of upward mobility. Like, did you guys take anyone from D2 or D3, or did anyone else in the Big Sky that you guys know of or recruit against take any D2, D3 guys?
Yeah, it's happening. It's happening. But the same thing that's happening at every level is happening to them, which is, some of them are jumping in and kind of getting stuck, and some of them are trying to shoot their shot, so to speak. But there are kids that are basically playing D2, D3 that are moving up to FCS that are is all of a sudden we lose a corner and we need a guy that can run and has played ball before. The JC route has become a lot more of a viable route for everybody. in the last couple of years because of just what's going on. Like us, like it's like we don't major in the portal. We go high school and JCs before anything else. We have taken a couple portal kids, but they've more kind of fallen in our laps more than anything. Local kids that just didn't make it and want to come back home type deal.
Just in regards of recruiting, right? You're doing linebackers now. What does the ideal linebacker look like to you?
Yeah, and you've seen it too, just in the defenses that you've been in. I think there's kind of give and take in size and ability, right? Like I think if you're taking a big explosive guy that's a little stiff, you're kind of sacrificing a little bit. If you're taking a guy that just is not as smart, but I think that there's always kind of just discussions to be had about it. Like where I'm at, we're not going to take the ideal backer. You know what I mean? We're taking a big developmental guy, and so in my room now, I actually have they've done a really good job here projecting and recruiting. So I've got one backer that is going to be a junior this next year, and he was all conference last year. And I think if he has a good year, he's going to be playing somewhere. You know what I mean? Uh, Good length, and that's the thing about projecting is you're trying to go for length, you're trying to go for speed, and you're trying to go for the guy that maybe isn't necessarily like the thumper, or the guy that's just racking up tackles, but is a guy that's a little bit more developmental. And so we're gonna miss more with longer, faster guys at all positions than we are, smaller guys. And so I've got a couple of backers that are, I mean, if you walked into our room and saw some of these guys, you'd be like, yeah, that's a proper looking backer, 6'3", long arms. You go out there after 2 years, I mean, they're developed. They look great and they're strong and they run. And so we're going to have a good backer crew just because these guys have done a good job projecting and developing.
Yeah, had a high school coach. I sent out a text couple months back asking, what would you ask, college coaches if you had the chance to interview? And I like this question. Do you listen to high school head coach recommendations, or do you think that they can be biased and they have a hard time of being objective with their player because it's their player?
Well, I think what it is like you recruit long enough, you start to run into coaches that are, and you kind of know, like, okay, all right, this guy is kind of like, and then you have other ones that you completely trust, like, and I think it's you get a little bit of both just from the high school coaches, but I absolutely believe in asking the high school coach what he believes about a player that we're recruiting, but it's sometimes high school coaches don't necessarily, for one thing, they don't know who's on our roster, and it's kind of annoying when you run into a high school coach. It's like, he's going to be the best player in your room. Like, motherfucker, you don't know who's in my room. You know what I mean? It's like, how can you say something like that? It's just untrue. It's like, well, I'm interested in that guy. You're like, that guy, and this guy's better than him. Yeah, but that guy that you like is 5'9" and makes tons of plays. I want the 6'3" gangly guy that is explosive, but has bigger projection, you know what I mean? And so sometimes high school coaches don't necessarily understand what you're trying to do or what you're looking for. I think you're a little full of crap as far as just projecting, but that's, you got to miss big and miss fast. You know what I mean? If you miss small and miss slow,
Yeah.
there is no place for that type of player. But if you at least get like a big or a tall or a long fast guy, it's like, okay, I mean, we can move from here to here to here to here. Okay, all right, it didn't work out. You know what I mean? I think when you're in the developmental model, it's a little bit more like that.
Is there anything unique that you look for with an athlete that might be indicators for their athleticism and or their mental makeup? And just for an example, when I was at Oregon, Coach Mirabal, the O-line coach there, he liked to see how offensive linemen got up off the ground. Like, was it segmented? Did they pop straight back up? That, and obviously, like, just how were they in open field with a screenplay? Like, what did their gait look like? But for you, is there anything unique that you look for?
Uh, yeah, I'm a big hip flexibility guy.
Yeah.
I think it's such a stop-start game. Change of direction is super important, but also just block escape. Ability to just kind of get away from things and get around things. I think now you can play with a stiff guy, but he's got to be. To me, that stiff guy's got to be super strong and right. Like he's got to be smart. But yeah, hip flexibility to me is just one of them that's
Yeah.
super important. It
What is
really at
that?
all positions.
What does that look like on tape, game tape? I know now you have camp tape where you can see their hip flexibility because they're doing an overhead squat. But on game tape, what's popping out, we're like, okay, that guy's got some bend and some mobility to him.
Doesn't fall down underneath it. You know what I mean? This uh, players fall. It's just they have a hard time catching themselves, catching balances. When they're put in awkward positions, they just fall. You know what I mean? And so like Takari. Takari's got unbelievable hips. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Were you? Do you remember? You remember Taj Mullix, or were you gone already?
I was there for the spring. I was there
Okay,
for the
and so
spring.
he was,
Yeah.
he's a smaller D tackle, but he can make it work because he had super good hips. You know what I mean? Rarely falls down, slippery, like that kind of thing. And even at the backer spot, like one of the most explosive backers in the room was a guy that's a little bit stiffer. I think you remember who that was, the kid from Utah, from Bonneville
At
at Oregon State.
what's his name? I played golf with him. Gosh, that's gonna kill me.
Yeah.
It's gonna kill me. I know who you're talking about.
Well, anyways, let's change of direction, just that kind of stuff. It's just those kind of things stick out to me. It's if you don't have good hips, you're always on the ground and you're always a little bit slow changing direction.
Yeah,
It's easier to block you because you're not as slippery, maneuver out of just certain positions. I think hip flexibility is a big thing.
that's good stuff right there. Any acronyms or quotes or values that you kind of use in your room, or just I guess just personal philosophy that you don't mind sharing?
I think earlier in my career that was the thing. It was like I was trying to, memorize as many of those as I can, but I think every situation is just different. And so it's important to just teach and make sure that the situation is right for everything.
Yeah,
And
you
not
get
not to say the acronyms are bad. I've heard so many good ones through the years, but there's nothing that I, hang my hat on when it comes to just that.
yeah. What I want you to kind of geek out on this. Why do you think the sport of football is the greatest sport?
To me, the game of football is one of the most complex games. The geometry of the game super complex. The amount of people that have to be on the same page in order for you to make things work at the college level. You know what I mean? Like the amount of people that are involved in a program in order to make it work. But at the same, but the I mean, you're talking about all these people to make it work, but you're also talking about each of these people being a living organism. You know what I mean? I think that's what makes it super complex. And I think in that complexity, there's so much. There's so many lessons to be learned about life. You know what I mean? I think the game of football there's so much about it that really teaches you about life. I like to think of it as if you go into a recording studio, you have those big old dashboards with so many buttons, right? All those little things to turn. I mean, that's a program. It's like you've got coaches, that's one line, right? And each of these coaches is a glowing organism. One day it's bright, the next day it's down. You know what I mean? And as a coach and as a program, it's like learning to reach over to the button next to you and kind of turn, you know what I mean? It's like support that button that's not growing as much or glowing as much. Then you've got the quarterbacks, then you've got the linemen and the receivers and the tight ends and the running backs, and you've got all the defensive positions, and then you've got the idea of strength and conditioning and keeping everybody healthy. And then you've got the ideas of just planning and how you practice. I mean, it's a big dashboard, but it's not just dashboards of moving buttons around. Every button that's glowing is a person. And I think that there's so much, it's such a dynamic thing to be working with somebody to accomplish a common goal, that you learn so much about yourself, you learn so much about life, and you have to rely and fall back on these principles, these everlasting principles that have been true from the beginning of time, about charity, about work, about, dignity, about integrity, just everything that you've got to rely on in order to make it all work. You know what I mean? And that to me just makes this game so cool. I think that there's nothing like it. There can be nothing like it because of what this game gives us and what this game is.
That's great stuff right there. And just to kind of piggyback off that too, it's like, when you're turning the dial on whatever it might be, whether it's a practice plan adjustment or whatever, you're changing your indie or whatever, this coach addressed this player in a certain fashion to maybe get that player to trigger a certain way. Like there's so many unintended consequences that are taking place that, okay, now we might be doing better in this area. Now, okay, maybe this part of the dashboard's getting turned down a bit because we're
Yes.
highlighting this more. So just that's a really great metaphor as far as using the DJ dashboard or the music producer dashboard, and you're trying to get everything right and dialed so the sound and the frequency freaking sounds good. And hopefully you get some W's, baby.
That's
Hopefully you get
right.
some W's.
And you're trying to win games.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, every button is still, every button's just as important as the next button. And it's about, I'm not the scout team guy, right? You gotta have a freaking sorry scout team. That's difficult and all that. And these guys aren't worth the damn. Then you're eventually gonna, that's something that has consequences, right? And so every button's glowing. It's a living organism. And that's what this game is. And that's what I love about it.
That's good stuff, Coach. Any final advice on coaching, teaching, leadership, life that you'd like to share for the good of the community?
No, I appreciate you having me on. The one thing to me that is always important is just, I'm Christian. I believe in Christ, but to have that kind of Christ-like attributes and charity is it's literally, to me, it's the answer to life. I have a motto in my home. I ask my kids 3 questions and they answer back those 3 questions, and it's part of our family motto. Right? And the first thing I ask is, what is the answer to life? And the answer to life, they respond back, choosing charity. Right? Choosing because there's power in choice. And I want them to always understand that there's power in choice, and choosing charity is the answer to life. Right? What's the secret to life? Put your best efforts in the smallest tasks. What do we own in this life? I'm grateful for everything and entitled to nothing. And I think gratitude takes you far away. And those are the 3 things.
I really like that. I'm gonna go back when I edit it. I'm gonna write that down because that's some powerful stuff. Can I ask you, at what point, with your kids, did that kind of become solidified?
It was a couple of years ago. I've always had a family
recent
model.
Yeah,
I've always had a family model, like, for them growing up, and and it's changed through time. But this is the one that I've landed on a couple of years back. It was like, this is it, like the answer to life, the secret to life, and what do I own in this life? I think that's the way to always think about it.
That's good stuff, man. I appreciate that. That's good stuff. All right, Coach. Well, I'll get this turned around and I'll release it on Saturday. I'll give you a time. If there's a photo that you want to use, shoot it my way, or else I'll just go find one online. I'll find one online. Okay, gotcha. All right, man. Good to see you, Coach. Are you coming out for the showcase out here, the Pacific Northwest Showcase?
No.
Okay, gotcha. Roger. Are you going to recruit Oregon at all?
No.
Hell yeah. I'll see you sometime then. I'll see, maybe, I don't know, maybe 5 years. Fuck, I don't know. All right, partner. It's good to see you. Tell the family I said hi.
All right, bro. You too.
All right, Coach. Thank you so much.
Welcome to the Coachers Podcast. Coaches, athletes, parents, and fans, this is your vault for inspiration.